Well, hello and welcome once again to another edition of our video blog, The Overcomer. This is Dr. John Hawkins, coming to you from here in my office at Gateway Counseling Center, located here in Boynton Beach, Florida. I've got a question for you today. When was the last time you went to a doctor when you felt good? Oftentimes I ask my clients a question when they come in, well, how you doing today? And every once in a while, I'll get one who says, well, if I was doing good, I wouldn't be here to see you. Well, that's true. I guess it's kind of a dumb question. We don't go see a doctor when we're feeling great. Just to stop by and say, hey, I want to tell you I'm feeling just wonderful. And we should go see a doctor when we're not feeling good. We're having symptoms that are interfering in our life, making me maybe feel miserable. So the doctor is trying to figure out what's the disease that's going on and cure that by looking at our symptoms. Well, I found there's a lot of people with what I call dis-ease. They're depressed, they're anxious, they're generally unhappy, and it's interfering in their life. And they'll ask this question, what's wrong with me? We spend a lot of our time looking backwards, looking at our regrets, our faults, our traumas, our mistakes, all the things that we feel like we need to change to get feeling better in life. Now, there is a time to do that. We do that all the time here with folks, looking at the past, trying to help them have a better future. But you ever ask the question, what's right with me? It's not hard to think about what's wrong with me. And there are a lot of people that have told us in the past and will continue to tell us what's wrong with us. But how many people do you have that tell you it's right with you? What's right with you? You have this one fellow in a Bible study class I teach, and he usually come up to me. He said, hey, I just want you to know I appreciate you. He said, anybody tell you that today? I said, well, you're the first one. That's the way life is, isn't it? Most folks don't say a lot of positive things to us. What's right with me? In couples counseling, I'll ask people because they're coming in with problems in their relationships, and usually a lot of times by the time I'm seeing them, they're talking about complaints they have towards each other. And sometimes I'll ask them, well, what do you love about this person? Why did you marry this person? You didn't start out feeling this negative, about each other. And, that's true with things. People don't get married to get divorced. They don't get married because they feel miserable about each other. And so I'm trying to help them figure out things they could do to improve the relationship, focusing on the solution, not just the problem. The only solution that we have any control over in our life is ourselves. I can't really change anybody else. The only person I can change, is me. Now, I can tell people what I'm unhappy about, maybe what I don't like about them, but I really can't change them. So eventually I come back to I have to focus on me. That's why Jesus spoke in a parable in Matthew 7. He said this, why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and there is a log in your own? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will clearly see to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So I always have to start with me. But in starting with me and looking at, okay, what part am I in the problem versus blaming others? Blaming others is as old as the Garden of Eden. We had the story of Adam and Eve and how God told them not to eat of the fruit of the tree there, and they both did. They were tempted by the devil, and when God comes looking for them and asks them, hey, what did you do? And what's Adam do? First thing he does is he blames Eve. He says, well, God is that woman that you gave me. And then when he asked Eve, what'd you do? And she said, well, basically the devil made me do it. The serpent, he deceived me. And ever since, that's human nature. We always want to blame other people. Look for the negative in other people. But right along with that, we tend to look for the negative in ourselves. Because a lot of times we've grown up and other people that were important in our life, whether intending to or not intending to, they pointed out the negative. It's so much easier to point out the negative in people than the positive. And eventually that gives me what I call a negative lens, where I just tend to focus on the negative in my own life. And so I want you to think today from a different perspective. What's right about me? When was the last time, that you did that? I want you to focus on a view of yourself that's a more healthy one, a more positive one. Your unconscious mind doesn't really hear negatives. So when you say something like, oh, I don't want to do that, well, then my unconscious mind just hears, oh, do that. That's why in sports psychology, they'll have people focus on how do you want to throw the ball? How do you want to hit the ball? Focus on the ideal way that you want to do that. Trying to activate your unconscious mind to say, throw it this way, hit it right down the fairway, rather than saying, oh, don't hit it into the water. And so think about that today. Let's focus a little bit on what's right with you. I always say you become what you focus on. And, God made an interesting promise to us. As a believer, he says, I have predestined you to be conformed to the image of Christ. We were originally created in the image of God. We were perfect. And we knew, okay, we blew that one. But God is in the business of returning us to that image. And it's a lifetime project. And so if we would understand, God has a more positive view of us. In other words, he doesn't see us in the negative light. He sees us as this finished product, returning to the image of God. Do you ever think of yourself, that way? Now, I know some people are arrogant and conceited, and they think they're, God's gift to the world, or they think they are God. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about a more positive view of yourself. Seeing yourself more about, as God does, what's right with me? What are the good things that I have, in my life? What kind of strengths do I have? What kind of talents do I have? What kind of gifts do I have? Have you ever had people compliment you and tell you, oh, when you did this thing, or when you said this, or they say, oh, you're really gifted in this area, or that really encouraged me, or that really helped me. And a lot of times people tend to just blow that off and like, oh, yeah, thanks, but they don't really believe it. But if you get several people that are like unrelated, unconnected, and they start saying the same things about you, then maybe I should listen to that. Maybe there's something to that. That's how I can identify some of my gifts or talents or abilities, because they'll be recognized by other people. It's the Proverbs that says a man's gift makes a way for him. As you start to discover these strengths, these abilities, and just start to use them, others will eventually recognize it. Now the big challenge is I have to recognize that. Because if I have this negative lens on, I screen out anything positive, anything good about myself. And I always focus on the negative, and that's all that I see in my life. And no matter how much someone tries to tell me otherwise, I just won't believe it. So I want you to focus today on your strengths, because really we get a better return on our strengths than we do our weaknesses. And we want to try to correct our weaknesses, but the idea is I don't want to put all my focus on the weaknesses. I just want to minimize those so they don't interfere in my strengths. But if I focus on my strengths, that's where I'll get a better return. Things that I can be naturally, good at, or have some aptitude for, some passion for, some interest in. So I want you to think today about just a few simple steps on how to figure out what's right about you. Here's the first one. Number one is identify your strengths. By that I mean your skills, your interests, your character traits, things that you have a passion for, talent in. These are the raw materials that God designed you with. And they usually need to be developed, just like you take raw material out of the ground and then you've got to refine them so they can be made into something or accomplish something. So we have these raw materials. Now there's assessments that you can take on that. You can that figure some of those things out. You can go back and look when you were growing up and a kid, what things did you gravitate towards, things that you like to play or things that you like to do. Were you always setting up a lemonade stand or doing something that was more entrepreneurial? Did you like to work with your hands and take things apart? Those things start to reveal some of the abilities and talents that we have. Talk to people who know you, and ask them, what do you think my strengths are? What do I do that you think that I'm good at? And then listen to that positive, feedback. I know there's always somebody who says, well, I just don't have any talents. I'm not good at anything. Well, that's because you have a negative lens and you've been running that thought through your mind, for a long time. But Jesus told another parable about 3 guys and how the master gave them talents. He gave one 10, one 5, one 2. Interesting thing about that is he didn't judge these 3 fellows the same. He didn't expect out of the 10 talent guy what he expected out of the 5 or 2 or the 1. And so those guys all went out, they took the talents they had and they did something with it. And the one that had 10, he made 10 more, and one of 5 made 5 more. And the guy with the 1, he didn't do anything with it. He just went out and, buried it because he's afraid. He was afraid. He knew what his boss was like. He was afraid, well, what if I do something with this and I lose this? And he got really rebuked by the boss. And he said, okay, take from that guy with the 1, give it to the guy with the 10. And we look at that and say, well, that's kind of unfair, isn't it? I mean, that's all that guy had. But the boss said, look, you know the kind of guy that I am. I expect a return on my investment. And really, if you were investing, where would you invest? Would you invest where you'd get no return? Or would you invest where you'd get a 5-fold or a 10-fold return? That's just common sense. And so we all have some talent, and we're not in competition with anybody else. We don't get measured against anybody else. I just simply get measured against what I do with what I have, what's been given to me. And so don't worry about anything else. Don't compare yourself to anybody else and all their talents and abilities that you feel that they have. Focus on discovering what is my talent, what is my ability, even if it's only 1. Discover that 1 then and maximize it. So identify your strengths. Number 2 is make a list of positive and good things about yourself. And try to start with at least 5. I've had people at times, they can't come up with 5. They may get 1 or 2 and they get stuck. They say, well, I can't think of anything else. Well, don't overlook the small things. Don't overlook the simple things. Now, nobody's perfect. So we're not talking about something you're going to be perfect at. Nobody is. But when you look at something that most of the time, this is how I am. This is the kind of character that I have. This is what I tend to do. In other words, do you say please and thank you? Are you a thankful person that you can say thankful to folks? Do you say please when you ask them for something? Did your mom teach you that when you were a little kid? And you still operate that way? You say, yeah, but that's nothing. No, it's a problem. Don't overlook something simple. That is something. That's manners. That's gratefulness. So maybe you're a loyal friend. Maybe you don't like to gossip. So just start with some simple, try to come up with 5 and just put that on the list. Don't overlook the simple things. And then number 3 is review your list daily. Just each day, go through your list, and if you start with those 5 and say, okay, here's 5 good things about me. Here's 5 positive things about me. And if you start thinking like that, before very long, you'll start to think of something else. And then add that to your list. And then as you keep doing that, you're going to retrain your brain to move away from what I call those automatic negative thoughts. These ants, always thinking negative things about myself. And just every time you get one more good thing, add it to the list. Or you get 2 or 3 people that mention something positive that you've done, or a skill that you have, or how you helped or encourage them. Add that to the list. And then just review that on a regular basis. You're not being arrogant or proud. You're trying to move away from that negative list. And then here's number 4. Develop your skills and abilities. Like I said, those are your raw materials, so you have to work with them. That's our responsibility. You know, God gives us these things. Now we need to do something with us. Maybe you've heard of that principle, the 10,000 hour rule. That was made popular by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers. You know, the idea was if you want to be an expert at something, you spend 10,000 hours practicing it. Well, that's not like a law or totally true, because there are other variables that come into play on that. But the principle is, you know, if you want to get good at something, you practice it and you keep practicing it. And as you keep practicing it, the better you'll get at it. And the better you'll get at it, you'll gain confidence in it. And here's number 5. Stay humble and share the glory. In other words, as you learn to think about what's right with you, you're going to change your belief system and you're going to change your behavior. And then others will start to recognize that. And then they'll start to say positive things about you. As you get positive feedback or you get recognition for these good things in your life, don't take all the credit. Pass it around. Give some of that credit to God, who made you and maybe gave you that raw material. Give some of it to other people who've helped you. None of us are self-made. Just pass the credit around. And this will help you stay in that positive mindset as you start to show gratefulness and gratitude towards other people. Because when you start to see the good in yourself, then you start to see the good in other people. And you're going to be a happier person. And you're going to have a positive effect on other people. And you may even break some family cycles. Well, I hope you'll try some of these things. There's an article on the website about it. You could read through that and help you overcome that negative outlook. Well, till next time, I hope these things will be a help to you. If we can be any help, give us a call at Gateway Counseling Center, gatewaycounselingcenter.com. And until next time, keep overcoming. And I'll talk to you then. Bye now.